Good day, everyone. Apologies for the network glitches during the live session. It was actually raining in my area, so that affected the network. So I decided to record this so that you can go through it at your own convenience. So I'll quickly get to it. My name is Onyema Abdeze, and I'm an architect by profession. I'm also a BIM modeler and a system designer. Also, I'm a BIM consultant. I'm part of a small outfit in Nigeria where we offer BIM consulting services to architecture, engineering, and construction firms. I'm also a content creator. I've authored a book. I've written several long and short form articles. I create podcasts. I write books. I create content in a wide array of formats. In terms of certification, I'm an Autodesk certified professional ACP for Revit architecture, mechanical and electrical disciplines. And finally, I'm also a LinkedIn learning instructor. I've created 2 online courses on LinkedIn learning. I'm currently working on the 3rd. So today I'll be talking about how to kickstart your BIM journey, and this is informed by the fact that a lot of people are aware that BIM is gaining adoption in the build sector, but they are kind of confused on where to start. So in the course of this presentation, I'll be looking at four main things. First, I'll look at digital transformation across the globe. So I'll lay some foundation of the need for digital transformation on the build sector, and after that I will talk about building information modeling, and I will explain some important concepts of building information modeling from a practical viewpoint. And after that, I'll look at some industry insights. I will offer some insights based on industry practices across the globe, and finally I will recommend some way forward. I will offer some recommendations on how best to make the best of digital transformation and BIM generally in the build sector. So let me get started. So the pandemic has disrupted the world as we knew it. The COVID-19 that started in 2019 but became a reality in 2020 has disrupted the way we do a lot of things. Today, the way we do our day-to-day routines, the way we work, even people we consider heroes. During the COVID-19 era, we realized the importance of such professions as logistics, nursing, and all that. And even the way we move around, the way we connect with people, the way we carry out our day-to-day businesses, the way we rehearse, and even the way we experience the world around us. As designers in the build sector, the way we even imagine and design has also impacted in numerous ways. I mean, today, remote working and work from home are becoming a reality. So at this point, it becomes obvious that the transformation is no longer an option, but a must. Right? So, nonetheless, the onset of Industry 4.0 is affecting all sectors of the economy, and the construction industry is not an exception. But then, according to several reports, a good example here is the McKinsey Global Institute 2015 report. It identified that the construction industry is the second digitized sector in the world. I mean, as much as we have been adopting BIM and other transformation trends in the industry, we are still the second digitized sector in the world today. We are just slightly better than agriculture and hunting based on this report. I mean, they use a couple of factors to evaluate the level of digitization of various sectors. And so you can see some of them has to do with assets, some of them has to do with usage, and some of them has to do with labor. And you can see all the various sectors in the world, and in the end, it's just slightly better than agriculture and hunting. So that means I will have a lot to do in the industry to make a good progress. When you look at the way digital transformation takes place across every sector, it typically takes place in 4 major stages, right? So the construction sector is not making full use of the potential of these digital technologies. When you look at these 4 stages, you find that typically when you bring it down to the construction sector, when firms want to embark on their digital transformation journey, a lot of time, what we've experienced over the years, back in the early 1990s to early 2000s, we began to move away from just using our hand to design. Now we move to computer-aided design, where we used to draft 2D CAD information, right? So, and in the early 2000s to date, we began to also move beyond just drafting. We now began to create 3D models, information-rich, intelligent 3D models, right? So that's like the second stage, which is the step 2 you can see here. But then in recent years, with the advent of the internet and cloud technologies, we are now beginning to also move to cloud collaboration and some other platforms online. Even some companies today, some software vendors today are now beginning to move away from just desktop apps to being able to have a cloud interface and also collaborate with people. With that, you're not limited to a physical location, a particular location, but you can collaborate with people from any part of the world. But then beyond just the collaboration and the processes of designing and delivering buildings, the final stage is now when we begin to look at the built asset itself. We are not just talking about BIM and the delivery process for built assets, but we're now looking at the assets we are delivering. So this is now we're now beginning to talk about things like smart buildings, digital twins, and the like. So when you look at it collectively as an industry, you see that a lot of firms in the industry are still somewhere between this step 1 and step 2. They are just trying to move away from CAD and moving away to BIM. A lot of them are not maximizing the power of the cloud or even delivering smart buildings or begin to create digital twins of facilities. Right, so this kind of validates the fact that as an industry we still have a long way to go. And then when you look at when you begin to investigate the sources of this apparent backwardness of the industry, one of the things you realize is that the contract method or the delivery method used on project 2 is also very disintegrated. In many projects today, they use the traditional contract method, whereby the designers or the consultants have to first of all design a facility, and after they finish the design, they now put it up for bid, and then different contractors will now bid, and then they will award it to the best bidder, right? So when you look at this process, see that it kind of divides the designers and the builders, and that ends up bringing some adversarial relationship between those two teams. Also, the inputs of these contractors, which are the people that actually do the construction on sites, the suppliers, the subcontractors, and the main contractors, general contractors, and the trades, the inputs are not mostly sought during design, and that's actually a big waste because they're actually the ones that have more field experience than even the designers themselves. So when you look at it, see that it's highly disintegrated. When you look at some other industries like the automobile industry or the telecom industry, that's not the way they design and deliver their assets or their products. So that's one of the root causes of the disintegrated nature of the industry. I mean, it's also surprising that up to 30% of the activities on the typical construction sites are actually waste. I mean, this can be traceable to issues that could have been avoided during design stage, but because they were not resolved during design, by the time you get to a construction site, there's a whole lot of chaos that's taking place there. Things that could have been resolved, things that could have been identified and trusted during design were not resolved, and then by the time you get to site, it results in a lot of waste. So these are based on a lot of industry research, and also according to these reports, or this survey that was carried out by KPMG climbing the curve back in 2015, it states that just a quarter of construction projects typically come close to 10% of the original deadline, which means that many projects exceed the original deadline. Right, you can see a project that was initially estimated to last for just 2 years, it ended up taking 5 to 6 years to finish, and that's because even the construction sequencing and all those things, the project phasing and the resources and everything that were required to deliver that project was not fully put into consideration during the design stage. So these are issues that we have in the industry. And also another report by Turner and Townsend back in 2016 also said that to make matters worse, the average global construction project margins keep falling by the year. I mean, leveraging digital transformation, a lot of sectors have been experiencing growth in their profit margins. Talking about the IT sector, the telecom industry, and all those other sectors, they've been experiencing a lot of profit margin, growth in profit margin, but the build sector has been either stagnant or sometimes even retrogressing. So these are some issues we have in the industry. Now, to address these issues, developed economies now began to embrace more integrated procurement contract methods such as design and build, whereby a single entity is now responsible for both designing and building. So you see, this is now in a bid to minimize this waste and all these issues we have, this lack of collaboration or disintegration we have in the industry. Right, but even design and build also have its limitation, because most time, because a single entity is responsible for design and building, so sometimes they try to protect their interests at the expense of the client, and these are some of the issues we have. But at least it's a step in the right direction from the design build that we have. There are also other contract methods. One of the most popular one that's also gaining traction recently is integrated project delivery, whereby all the stakeholders now come together and they begin to share in the risks and the rewards. So this is still a bit similar to the traditional method, but now every stakeholder now come together and they understand that when they come together to work together, when there's a reward, they all share in it. When there's a risk or losses, they also share in it. So that kind of helps the collaboration to be much more integrated. So these are basically what some countries or economies are trying to do to improve the coordination between different stakeholders in the industry. Right, but the truth is that for this integrated delivery to be successful, a process that brings all these parties together needs to be deployed, and that's where BIM information modeling comes in. So basically, BIM information modeling is a process, a technology-based process that aims to minimize all the waste and all the losses and all the disintegration we have in the build sector. Right, so this is just one of the popular definition of BIM by the National Institute of Building Sciences. So it defines BIM as a digital representation of the physical and functional characteristics of a facility that serves as a shared knowledge resource for information about a facility, forming a reliable basis for decisions during its life cycle from inception onward. This is quite a long definition, but then if you break it down now, you see that you're trying to create a digital version of a facility. For example, what you can see on the screen here is the architectural structure and MEP model of a facility. So this is a digital version of that facility that now serves as a shared knowledge resource for information about that facility, and it forms a reliable basis for decision during its life cycle from inception of the project onwards. So what that means is you are creating a digital version of a facility, not just some fancy looking 3D model on the screen, but you are creating an intelligent 3D model. So that is why the BIM process is technology based process. And of course, there are other aspects of it. You are creating structured data, you are creating structured information that follows certain standards like the ISO 19650 standard and the like. So that's basically one of the popular definitions of BIM. If you Google BIM on the internet today, you see a lot of definitions, but this quite captures the essence of deploying BIM on a project, right? But of course, for BIM implementation on a project to be successful, one of the strategic activities that help to bring everyone on the same page from the project inception is what is called BIM execution plan. Right, so BIM execution plan basically is a series of meetings that is carried out at the inception of a project that wants to implement BIM. You're basically planning how you will execute BIM project. That's why it's called an implementation plan. Right, so basically there are 4 major steps in the BIM execution planning process. The first step is where you begin to identify the project goals from the client, and then you now find out the corresponding BIM uses in the industry. So in the industry, there are about 25 BIM uses, such as cost estimation, project sequencing on site, cloud detection, 3D modeling, and all those things. So by the time you identify the goals, what the client is trying to achieve on the project, you now find out the corresponding BIM uses that will help to achieve that goal. That's the first stage of the BIM execution planning process. And after that, once you've identified the BIM uses, you now begin to map them together into what's called a process map. You have level 1 process map for the entire project, and you also have level 2 process map, which is the internal coordination for each of the BIM uses and the teams that are responsible for that. So basically, you map how all the BIM uses come together. For example, if you identify that you are going to do cost estimation on the project, for you to do cost estimation, you need to first of all create a 3D model. So the 3D model will come first before cost estimation on the process map. If you say you want to create a record model of the facility for facility management at the end of the construction, that means you need to have a 3D model. You need to have gone through the construction stage before you can have a record model. So all those things will be mapped on the process map. That is the second stage of the execution planning process. And then the third is what we call the information exchange worksheet. Information exchange, this is typically an Excel sheet that outlines the responsibilities of each of the stakeholders, their software they are going to be using, the versions of the software, and all those things, who is responsible for what, who is sending what information to who, and all those things. So basically, it's a spreadsheet that outlines how each stakeholder on the project comes in, and this is what the BIM manager and other managers on the project will be using to track the project as it progresses. And of course, this kind of a contractually binding agreement between all the team members on the project, and it keeps everyone on the same page right from the project inception. And then finally, the fourth stage is now where we begin to identify the support infrastructure, which is mostly the hardware, the collaboration platforms, and the meetings and all those things that will make the BIM implementation on the project successful. So you see that when you have all the team members on the project come together to have this kind of agreement from the project inception, it makes the implementation of BIM on the project very efficient. Right, so these are addressed typically through a series of meetings. It could be 4 different meetings that span over weeks, or it could actually be 4 meetings that span over 2 days, or depending on the extensiveness of the project and how robust or how experienced the team members are. Right, so it's become obvious that adopting BIM on a project benefits everyone, as it helps to bridge communication gaps, which otherwise will result in numerous problems. And also, you also have different levels of BIM on a project. So, of course, we know that a 3D model has 3 axes, X, Y, and Z axis, right? But in the industry today, you begin to hear of things like 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D. So this is just basically a summary of what some of these dimensions mean. So the dimensions are simply additional layer of information that you add to a 3D model. So when you're talking about a 4D BIM model, it has to do with being able to utilize 3D models to capture time on a project. When adding dimension of time on a 3D model, for example, you want to be able to use the BIM model to sequence project execution on site. So that means when you are creating a 3D model, the elements within that model also have information of time, how they be delivered on site. So when you begin to add that information of time on a project, then that's a 4D BIM. And then we're talking about 5D BIM, you are adding, in addition to the time, you're also adding the cost implications of the elements. So all those elements on the BIM model, you can extract costing from them. So you're not just creating a 3D model, but the quantity surveyor, for example, can go into the BIM model and extract all the information they need to procure items on the project. When you're creating that level of BIM model, then that becomes a 5D BIM. You also have 6D, 7D, and the likes. When you're able to use the BIM model for analysis, things like structural analysis, sustainability analysis, lighting analysis, and the likes, then that becomes 6D model. Then 7D is when you're also able to use the BIM model for facility management. So that means you already have been able to capture all the information about that facility to the extent that a facility manager can now use it to manage the facility. At that level, we are talking about 7D. Of course, you have additional dimensions. So you can see up to 14D when you start talking about smart cities and the likes, but these are the most popular ones you can find in the industry today. So that's the first stage of this presentation. The second one, I want to look at an industry report that was carried out in New South Wales on Class 2 buildings. So basically, it explored the utilization of the construction industry, how we've been able to digitize as an industry in that part of the world, and specifically on Class 2 buildings. So these are some insights from that report, among others. One of the first one is the formats of submission of development applications. I mean, the way they submit drawings before the construction stage, right? So you can see from this legend here, you can see no digitalization of PDF with standard templates, 2D CAD, 3D CAD, BIM software, or other 3D models, and not applicable. So the summary of this is that the majority of them still use PDF for submission. In fact, in some developing countries, they print out in papers and submit. So this is to tell you how much you can still do as an industry when it comes to digitizing our drawing submissions. Because what's the essence of creating a 3D model if you have to still convert it to PDF and submit? Right, so that was for development application. Now this is for as-built drawings after the buildings have been constructed. So we also look at the legend here. You see that some are not prepared, some print hard copies, some use PDF, DW, or similar CAD file from our 3D model or walkthrough, and some then BIM. So just like the development applications, this as-built, the majority is still in PDF format. So what's the essence of creating an intelligent BIM model if you still have to print it in PDF? So that is kind of defeating, right? But that is basically what the survey reported. And then this next one here is looking at the software that they are using for the design and documentation and all that, right? So software used for building design and also as-built drawings. And then the right side on red here is by builders, while the left side on blue is by designers. So when you look at the software they use mostly, you see that majority use AutoCAD, followed by Revit, then SketchUp, then ArchiCAD, Rhino, 3D Studio Max, Grasshopper, Vectorworks, MicroStation, Atlantis, Architect 3D, KICKSTARTIng, and the likes. Right, so that's just basically talking about software. And now the software they also use for document management and project management by designers and builders as well. So you see that the leading software here is Microsoft Project, followed by Economies, then Bluebeam, Procore, Bitsoft, Navisworks, Primavera, Plan, Grid, Fieldwire, Built, Exact, Innate, and all that, right? So that is by builders and then by designers. And then it's talking about data storage profile, how they store their data, right? So the three options there is network attached storage using a local server, or cloud storage, or local hard drives, which is basically individual computers. Yeah, so you can see that majority are beginning to move to cloud, which is a good indication. Of course, New South Wales is relatively developed compared to some other countries. In many countries, they either use network attached storage or they use their individual computers for storing their files. Of course, this shows that we're gradually moving to the cloud as well, which is now the third stage of the transformation in the industry, right? And then this one is talking about the digitalization of activities on the site, right? So talking about estimating and pricing, cost control, design management, site activity record, delivery management, procurement management, safety, quality and compliance certification, equipment and asset records, environmental compliance, waste minimization, staff management on-site or off-site, subcontractors and suppliers management, and all that. So basically, when you look at for all these activities, the majority still use standard Office software. Some people even use paper-based records, people use specialist software packages, and just a few are beginning to migrate to cloud. right? So this shows you that in the field we're even a bit more than during design stage, right? And this is talking about how the general contractors obtain quotations from suppliers, right? So you see that 24% use quotations obtained through telephone, analyzed manually, 50% obtain quotations through internet, analyzed manually, while 19% use an electronic portal to obtain and analyze quotations, 5% obtain full e-procurement from the software as a service, and just 1% use other methods, right? So this also shows you that we still have a long way to go into using things like e-procurement and all that in the build sector. And then it's talking about how these firms train their staff. So staff training approaches utilized. You can see that 50% of designers and 42% of builders use ad hoc training processes on the job, which basically train on staff training by any means. That's ad hoc training processes. And then 24% of designers and 90% of builders have structured training program internally. Then 9% of designers and 7% of builders have structural training program externally that maybe once in a while they send their staff out for a structural training. And then about 17% of designers and 32% of builders don't even offer any specific training whatsoever. So this is to show you that we need to, offer more structured training, whether internal or external, in the build sector. And now this is talking about research and development investment profile, how much we invest into making research in the build sector. So when you look at this, you see that 14% of designers and 18% of builders don't even do any form of research whatsoever. And then 33% of designers and 50% of builders invest less than 1% of their total annual budget, total annual turnover to R&D budget, right? And then 1 to 3% is, you see 32% of designers, 23% of builders, 3 to 5%, 12% of designers, 4% of builders. So you can see that basically as an industry, we don't even invest that much in making research, and that kind of reflects why we are not making so much progress digitally as an industry compared to other sectors, right? Now this is now talking about drivers of digitalization. What drives these firms to make digital transformation, to embrace digital transformation generally? Because some firms are beginning to realize the importance, and these are the things that are driving them to embrace digital transformation, be it BIM or whatever process or whatever it is, to digitize and to transform digitally. So the first one here is they believe that they will get a greater level of accuracy and trustworthiness, and then they also improve quality and standards in construction. They will also be able to deliver complex projects within budget, time, and prescribed quality. And then they also be able to communicate between stakeholders and also bring about greater possibility of complex design, composition, fabrication, and visualization. And then they also be able to support building certification, gain competitive advantage, and also some believe that they'll be incentivized or they'll get some tax benefits from the government, because in some countries when you are adopting BIM or digitizing in your projects, you get some tax benefits from the government. So these are some of the drivers, and now these are not some of the barriers. So some other things also understand the importance of digital transformation, BIM and whatnot, but these are now some of the things that are keeping them from adopting it. And a lot of this has to do with cost. The first one here is talking about high cost of software purchase and licensing. This one is talking about high cost of digital tools and setting up equipment. So first one is talking about software, second one is talking about hardware, and the inadequate design fee to support digital innovation. A lot of firms believe that they are not being paid adequately for them to invest enough for all this. And then the fourth one here is also high cost of IT specialists. A lot of them believe that the people that are very good in all these things are also expensive to afford. And then some other ones talking about issues related to legal ownership of a model and ambiguity of the liability of design. Because when everybody is working on the same platform, exchanging information in real time, a lot of people are scared that they will lose their intellectual property to other people and all that. So these are some of the barriers as well. And then unavailability of a single suite of software to deal with all aspects of design and interoperability issues. So basically, for example, a structural engineer, you want to design a structural BIM model. You might have to start from Revit to create the BIM model, then you go to Prota Structures or another analysis software to do analysis, and then you come back to Revit to do documentation or whatever. So it's kind of hard to find one software that do everything that you need as a firm. I mean, you have so many software vendors, and a lot of them are not even interoperable. Sometimes you might have to export to IFC, sometimes you might have to export to Excel format or whatever in order to extract information to whatever tool you are using. So unavailability of a single software to deal with all aspects of design and interoperability issues. These are some of the issues some people also complain about when it comes to adopting the transformation in their day-to-day activities, right? And then issues in sharing design information by multiple parties and lack of collaboration between designers. You also have lack of relevant knowledge, skills, and training programs. So these are some of the issues. And then lack of support and leadership for digitization. So when you're not getting enough support from the leadership or management from the firm, that's also a barrier. And then lack of authority given to digital signatures and reliance on hard copies. So as much as we are digitizing, people still rely on PDF and hard copies and all those things. So those are also issues. And then lack of inadequacy of hardware to support high computational requirements. So for you to create a very large BIM model, you need to have high performance PCs or sometimes workstations and whatnot. So all those things require investment. So these are some of the barriers, and then this basically is a summary of the whole thing. So the ones in blue is for designers, the ones in red is for builders. So this is basically a summary of the drivers and the barriers of adopting the transformation in the BIM sector. So having looked at that report, I now want to make some recommendations or some action steps that you can take to implement BIM, or how to kickstart your BIM journey, because the essence of this presentation is to show you how best to kickstart your BIM journey as a professional, as a firm in the construction industry. Right, so the first recommendation I have here is start upskilling on the requisite BIM tools. So a lot of professionals today, they know how to create visually appealing 3D models, but not information-rich models that can be used for accurate costing analysis and project sequencing. So a lot of people today, because they can create 3D models, be it with Revit, SketchUp, or whatever software, KiCad or whatever, they believe that is enough for them. They are already BIM compliant. But the truth is, when you're not able to extract information, we talked about 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, and all those additional information you put into a 3D model. When your 3D model doesn't have those information, then it becomes a problem. And also, it's not just about creating 3D models, but the 3D model follow the industry standards in terms of things like your file naming convention, the folder structure. These are the kind of things that you find in things like ISO 19650 or other equivalent standards you find in the industry. So it's not just enough to create 3D models. You need to be able to create structured data, structured information that you can easily share, and anybody in any part of the world can understand. So those are the things that require staff upskilling, not just creating 3D models, right? And then second recommendation I have is being able to create a BIM Manager. Depending on the size of the company, you might even have BIM Manager, BIM Coordinator, BIM Specialist, BIM Modelers, and BIM whatnot, right? So, but basically, a BIM Manager is the person that will help to set up and manage information flow both internally and externally as regards BIM. This entails managing such things as file naming convention, folder structure, shared parameter files, keynote files, to name a few, right? So this person have a good understanding of how this software works. The person also understand how the various collaboration platform works. So the person should have some good IT skills, and this person should also have some good communication and people management skills, because you'll be interfacing with a lot of people. So those are the kind of things that ideally in a company, you don't expect that the designers will also serve as a BIM manager. It's important that you establish the role. Somebody should be responsible. Depending on the size of the firm, you can have multiple of them, but it's important that you create someone to manage the whole process of BIM in your company. And then thirdly, the third recommendation I have is set up a community environment. So AC firms need to start thinking about the communication channels with other stakeholders, consultants, contractors, suppliers, subcontractors, client reps, to name a few, right? So communication here is both human and software communication. It's vital to establish early enough a common platform for exchanging information known as a common data environment, right? So AC firm needs to start thinking about that. So it doesn't have to be a cloud-based platform. You can even start with a local server. Earlier I talked about the data storage formats. You can start with a local server, and then as you advance your journey, this transformation journey, you can now move to a cloud collaboration platform. But ideally, a community environment is a platform where you can always access up-to-date information for your projects. Ideally, it should be between all the stakeholders on the project, but you can even start internally as a company. You can establish a community environment for your projects. That's a step in the right direction. Then you can move beyond the company to other stakeholders eventually, right? And also, BIM is just one of the emerging trends we find in the industry. BIM complements some other processes and technologies, right? So basically, AC firms need to also familiarize themselves with other transformation trends that will make their work more efficient, such as virtual reality, rapid prototyping, generative design, reality capture, programming, and whatnot. So it's not just enough to be able to create intelligent 3D models, because the reality is that when you create a 3D model that's intelligent, it lays the right foundation for all these other technology trends. Things like virtual reality, for example. You can easily walk through an intelligent 3D model. You can even you can generate your digital twins from 3D model, and you can complement what you're doing with programming and all this other stuff. So these are complementary trends that AEC firms need to also familiarize themselves with. So having talked about that, these are now some implications for embracing BIM, because if you say you want to embrace BIM as a professional, as a firm, it also comes with some implications. The first one is that you have to move away from just creating 2D drawings. You need to start creating information-rich 3D models as against drafting 2D drawings. And then these 3D models will contain structural data, like I mentioned, such as defined in ISO 1952 set of standards, as against creating just 3D models for visualization purposes. So it's not just enough to create 3D models, you need to create structured data according to ISO 1950 or other equivalent standards. Some countries have their own equivalent of ISO 1950, right? So also the process of creating and managing the structured data and information, which is a collaborative process, also need to conform to the ISO 1950 set of standards, right? So how you name your files, how you arrange your files, the folder structure, even the families within your BIM Modeler and all those things need to follow a standard, so that when you send this out to anybody, the person can easily understand all that, right? And then some new technologies will also come into play over the delivery life cycle of projects. So these are just some implications for embracing BIM. And now this is talking about some effects this will have on your business, right? So the first one is that you will need to carry out proper BIM execution plan and inception of every project with all the stakeholders on the project. A lot of projects today, they just start, they don't even plan the project. But when you begin to implement BIM on your projects, you need to carry out BIM execution planning at the inception of the project. You need to bring together all the stakeholders. You need to plan how you implement BIM on that project, and at the end you create a BIM execution plan document that will now guide the subsequent stages of the project. So that's one of the implications business wise. Then secondly, you need to create a set of new templates, things like Revit templates, things like templates for your cloud collaboration platform, things like basically templates you create that you use to start your projects, so that you don't have to always start from scratch all the time. You need to create those things down. And you also need to create and fill up new job roles such as BIM Manager, BIM Coordinator, BIM Specialist, BIM Modeler, depending on the size of the firm. You also need to upskill the workforce on BIM technology and processes, right? So you need to carry out training to upskill your staff. And all these involve investment in hardware, investment in software, investment in training, investment in research and development, and all those things. So it requires investment, upfront investment, right? So this will also influence the procurement and delivery methods on projects towards more integrated methods. Even the way you procure things on projects, by the time you begin to leverage integrated project delivery approaches, then it also affects your procurement as a business or as a professional, right? And then there also be a higher level of collaboration with external stakeholders on projects, both physical and digital collaboration. And then for the soft side of things, these changes will also bring about some cultural resistance from the rank and file of the firm and beyond, and that will be opposed to such rigorous changes. So a lot of people may not buy into the whole changes that you are bringing in when you start implementing BIM in the company. So it's always common that some people begin to oppose that. It can be from the management, it can be from the cadre of the staff and whatnot. But these are some of the business impacts of adopting BIM. And then you also need to, because of all this, you need to create and sustain an enabling environment that promotes innovation. And lastly, there will likely be a temporary drop in the company's productivity as they go through the learning and implementation curves of the new process. Because when you start anything that is new, you need to learn and you need to, there's always a temporary drop in productivity. So what a lot of companies do is that they just take some small projects and use it as pilots. From those pilot projects, they learn and gradually they expand it to other projects, and eventually they can now apply it across the entire firm. So, but these are just some business implications of adopting BIM. So when you look at all this, you realize that this is not the type of journey that every firm will be willing to embark on without some long-term mindset and strategy driven by visionary leaders. So the bottom line is BIM implementation in a firm is a strategic process, right? Companies are inundated with pressures from projects running beyond deadlines with very low profit margins. Hence, the thought of investing in a new process seems like an unnecessary expense that will only slow things down even further. Right, so for you to embark on your BIM journey, you need to think about it strategically as a company and go about it strategically, right? So a lot of people want to always find out how expensive BIM is, or what's the price for not embracing BIM, or the opportunity cost and all that. Right, BIM is is a transformation, right? This is transformation journey. So the focus shouldn't always be on the cost of it, because it's just an upfront investment you're making. Every major change or transformation has a cost implication. That's the truth. Then the price of not embracing BIM is that your firm will not be able to compete for long if it refuses to improve its business processes, right? As we've seen, digital transformation has disrupted every industry, and the BIM sector is not an exception, right? So the opportunity cost of BIM is that in the short term, you might experience some productivity losses or even some losses in dividends and all that. But the truth is, those are just some short-term issues. In the long term, it becomes justifiable, right? So those are just some other things to think about when you're embarking on your BIM journey. So another thing is that a lot of firms in the AEC sector, they approach BIM implementation as a necessity, because in some countries they mandated the use of BIM. So a lot of people now see BIM implementation as a necessity to abide by government policies, if there are such policies in place, or a necessity to look good to clients and win projects, or a necessity to look good to other stakeholders in the industry, or even a necessity to be innovative. But the reality is that you just look at it as an innovation, as an investment that you're making, because in the long run it justifies itself. We have seen some of the drivers. It keeps you competitive and it keeps you ahead of the other folks in the industry. And also, one last thing, BIM requires strategic implementation and requires changing established business processes. But even more than that, it also involves people. So BIM, even if you have the latest tools, the latest hardware, the latest software, you have all the processes in place. If the people that are involved are not carried along properly, it will also not yield results. So for BIM adoption to be effective in a firm, everyone needs to understand the reason for the changes and buy into it. Hence, it requires both a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So top-down in the sense that the management need to support it, bottom-up in the sense that all the staff in the company as well need to buy into it and support it. That is the surest way to make implementation in a company successful. So basically, just to summarize, without approaching BIM adoption as a long-term business transformation process, its value will not be maximized. So at this point, I will also want to present an upcoming live training that we recently launched on our online learning platform, blazeme.com. So recently we launched this live training on our platform called the BIM Masters. So basically the idea, because we understand that BIM is a global trend, so if you have BIM skills, BIM modeling or BIM management skills, you can easily land job in any part of the world. So the idea is to equip people with relevant skills that you can use to land job in US, in Europe, in whatever part of the world. Even if you don't have any prior knowledge of BIM, or no matter your experience level with BIM, and this training you can join it from any part of the world. So it takes place live on this platform, www.blazeme.com. Right, so we understand the importance of BIM and transformation. So if you're a young professional that wants to improve your BIM modeling skills and you want to advance your career prospect, this training is for you. If you also want to become a BIM specialist and grow into BIM manager over time, then this is the right place to start. If you feel like you don't have necessary experience in BIM, or you feel like you don't have necessary certifications to boost your CV, if you answer yes to any of this, then this training is for you. So basically, this live training will equip you with the skill sets to become a BIM or Revit master. It will help you to enhance your BIM modeling skills. It can help you to become an AutoCAD certified professional. It will help you to stay up to date with technological trends in the construction industry. It will help you to land your dream job in any part of the world. And the interesting thing is that we've broken this down into modules, right? So basically, we have 5 major modules in this, spanning across different disciplines. So the first one that I have here is what we call Revit Information Management module. So each of these packages, these are packages, we have 5 packages actually. So each of the packages is broken down into 3 modules. Right, so this Revit Information Management, you have 3 modules under it. The first one is detailing documentation and annotation in Revit. The second one is Revit parameters, families and schedules. The third one is collaboration and coordination tools in Revit. So that is the first package I will have here, which is Revit Information Management. And then the second package I will have is for architects. So basically this one to have 3 modules under it. You have the basic architecture modeling in Revit, you have the advanced modeling in Revit for advanced things like massing and all the other advanced things like computational generative design. You find all those things under the second module in this package. And the third one is visualization. Right, all the visualization using Revit, using Vero, using Corona. We'll look at all that in the third module in this package. And then the third one we'll have here is for structural engineers. So just like the first 2, it also comprises 3 modules. right? So the first module has to do with 3D reinforced concrete modeling in Revit. Second one has to do with 3D steel and composite modeling in Revit. The third one has to do with structural loads and reinforcement modeling in Revit. All these are live training on the platform. And then the fourth package I will have is for electrical engineers. So this one too, just like the first three, has 3 modules under it. So these 3 modules, you begin to see things like using Revit for lighting design and analysis, power and communications in Revit, circuiting and panels in Revit. Those are the things you find under this 4th package. And then the 5th package is for mechanical engineers. Under this module, under this package, you begin to find modules for energy analysis, generating heating and cooling analysis in Revit, using Revit for mechanical systems and ductwork, using Revit for piping, whether it's for firefighting, domestic, and whatever type of piping you want to do in Revit. That is what you find under this 3rd module. So those are the 5 major packages we have in this training. And then you also have one last module for quantity surveyors. So in this place, we are going to be looking at how to carry out quantification and cost estimation using Revit, using Navisworks Manager, using Autodesk Takeoff and PlanSwift app. Right, so those are the 4 software we'll be exploring under this module. So in total, we have 16 different modules, and you can pick as many as meets your design need. You can purchase right from this platform. Once you make your purchase, you have an account, and these are also the breakdown of how the training. You can download the brochure of the training from here. Just click on here and you download the document that specifies all this information. Right, so basically this is a weekend training that happens Friday to Sunday, and it starts on the 7th of October. Right, so on the 7th of October, for the first 2 weekends, we focus on the general module or the Revit information management package. Right, so it starts on Friday and ends on so in total you have 12 classes under each package. So the next 2 weekends after that, we focus on the architectural modules. The next 2 weekends after that, we focus on structural modules. The next 2 weekends, we focus on electrical modules. Next 2 weekends, we focus on mechanical modules. And finally, we focus on the quantity surveyor. So this starts all the way from the 7th of October to the 17th of December. And you can pick as many modules or packages that meet your needs. So these are also some bonuses that come with this. You have access to exercise files, access to private group with other students, direct email access to the instructors, monthly group live course for 3 months after the course completion, and also a course completion certificate at the end of the training. Right, so basically after the live question, you have a personal access to the videos and other course materials for your student that brought. Remember that when you sign up on this platform, before you make a payment, you have an account, so you can always log in back and access all the recorded material during the training. Right, so the training has 9 instructors spanning all the disciplines: architecture, mechanical, electrical, structural, quantity surveyor, and all that. And these are people with vast experience, global experience. So it promises to be a loaded training. So basically, to get started, just visit this website www.blazeme.com/courses/BIM Masters Live. So thank you very much. At this juncture, I'll be ending this presentation. If you have any further clarifications, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be glad to answer your questions. Thank you.